The pen slipped from his fingers. It hit the marble floor with a sharp click, the kind of sound that echoes too long in a room that shouldn't exist. Not for someone like him. Noah Carter, a broke college dropout in thrift store shoes, stood in the grand hallway of a $47 million Bel Air mansion. A crystal chandelier swayed overhead. A camera blinked red in the corner. His palms were sweating. Across from him sat a woman in silk. Silver hair, sharp lipstick, and eyes that had watched empires rise and fall. Her voice was velvet and deadly. "All you have to do is sign it," she said. 7 days, no questions, no second chances. He looked down at the marriage contract. His name was there, next to hers. Charlotte Harrington. Age, 71. Net worth, $580 million. His own hand was shaking. Outside, an ambulance pulled away. The hospital had just called. His mother had slipped into a coma. No insurance, no time. The surgery cost $190,000. This was the only offer on the table. And yet, why was the door at the end of the hallway locked with a steel bolt? Why did the butler whisper, "Finish the 7 days, if you can"? And why was his name already written on her will, before she had even met him? Because on day 7, everything Noah believed, about her, about himself, about love, blood, and legacy, would be burned to ash. And the thing he saw in that final moment, it would change his life forever. 1 week earlier, the Los Angeles sun was brutal that morning, not in temperature, but in truth. It lit up every crack on the sidewalk, every stain on his worn-out sneakers, and every lie he'd been telling himself just to keep going. Noah stood outside the bursar's office, his backpack slouched like it had given up. Inside, his world was falling apart, one signature at a time. "Your scholarship's been revoked," the woman behind the glass said, without even blinking. "Academic misconduct. Professor Latchford filed a report." Noah's throat dried. "What misconduct? I never—" "It's final. You can appeal, but good luck." He knew what this was. Everyone did. Latchford had tried to get him to do favors, type up a private manuscript on weekends, rewrite lectures. When Noah refused, the man snapped. Now this. He stepped outside into the roaring sun, crushed but trying to hold himself upright. Then his phone buzzed. When he got to the janitorial office, the manager didn't meet his eyes. "I'm sorry, Noah. Orders from up top. You're not enrolled anymore. You can't work on campus. Union rule." He laughed. A dry, cracked laugh that didn't feel like his. His phone buzzed again. This time, his sister. "Noah, Mom collapsed. They're moving her to emergency. They said something about organ failure." His chest tightened. Time stopped. He didn't even say goodbye. He just ran. The hospital smelled like bleach and resignation. Noah's sister Mia was in tears. $190,000, she whispered. "They won't even operate without proof of funds. She's not on any plan." He pressed his hand against the cold wall, trying not to fall over. What was he supposed to do? Beg? Steal? They had no one. His father had vanished when he was 10. And now, this? He sat down in the hallway, head between his knees. That's when he saw her, Charlotte Harrington, draped in a black shawl, diamond earrings. She walked past with a cane that didn't touch the floor. A younger woman, maybe an assistant, was arguing with her. "You can't just pick someone off the street." "It's not the street. It's a hospital," Charlotte replied calmly. "Then why him?" "Because desperation is honest." Noah blinked. Were they looking at him? Before he could stand, he heard laughter, the cold, toxic kind. A familiar voice, his ex, Cassidy. Well, if it isn't Mr. Community College in a hoodie, she smirked, walking past with her influencer boyfriend. Still pretending to be a genius janitor, Noah? You look like you lost a fight with poverty. He didn't respond. He just watched her walk away and hated himself for still missing her. And then the woman in black stopped in front of him. Charlotte. You have the face of someone whose world is ending, she said, like it was a compliment. I might have an offer. He blinked. I don't know you. She smiled. That's precisely the point. That night he was driven, not in an Uber, but a private car with smoked windows, up into the hills of Bel Air. The mansion looked like something out of a movie. Steel gates, a garden that smelled like secrets, walls high enough to hide 1,000 regrets. Inside, a lawyer waited. So did a contract. 7 days, Charlotte said, pouring herself wine with a trembling hand. That's all. In return, your mother's surgery will be paid. You'll be given a place to stay. And if you stay the full 7 days, there will be a bonus. What's the catch? He asked. She sipped the wine. Everything in life has a catch, Noah. You just have to decide which ones are worth it. He looked down at the paper. Her name, Charlotte Grace Harrington. Age, 71. His name, Noah James Carter. Age, 22. The contract was clean, precise, terrifying. And I don't touch you? He asked. This isn't that kind of thing? She raised an eyebrow. I'm not interested in your body, Mr. Carter. I'm interested in your presence. What do I have to do? Just stay. 7 days? Exactly. And then she stood, walked to the window, and stared out into the glowing Los Angeles night. And then you'll understand why. He wanted to say no. Every voice inside him screamed it. But then he saw his mom in a hospital bed. He saw Cassidy's laughter echoing through his skull. He saw the eviction notice crumpled in his jacket. And he saw Charlotte, standing alone in a house that echoed. He signed the paper, but as the pen touched the final line, the butler entered and whispered into Charlotte's ear. She nodded, and then she looked at Noah and said softly, "The room upstairs stays locked. That's rule number 1. Break it, and you'll wish you never met me." The marriage happened in less than 5 minutes. No music, no guests, no smiles. Just Noah in a borrowed suit, Charlotte in deep navy silk, and a notary who looked more like a mortician than a witness. They signed. They shook hands. They didn't even look at each other when the words husband and wife were spoken. Charlotte simply turned away and said, "The guest wing is to the right. Dinner is at 8. Don't be late. I don't tolerate scattered routines." And just like that, Noah Carter, once a broke janitor, now legally married to a woman old enough to be his grandmother, stepped into a life that felt more like a trap than a gift. The house was a maze, polished wood that creaked in places it shouldn't, walls lined with paintings of people who never smiled, portraits of her mostly, young, beautiful, proud, but never with anyone else. No husband, no children, just her, surrounded by wealth, drowning in silence. The maid handed him a black envelope. Inside was a typed letter. The house rules. 1. The east wing is off limits, especially the second-floor room with the gold door. 2. You may not leave the estate for the full 7 days. 3. You may not inquire about my past. 4. You will dine with me each evening at 8 p.m. sharp. No excuses. 5. You will not bring outside guests. 6. You will not ask me about my will. And most importantly, you will never, under any circumstance, enter my music room without invitation. There was no signature, just a wax seal with a phoenix etched into it. Noah stared at it, feeling a knot twist in his stomach. This wasn't a marriage. It was a contract wrapped in velvet and shadow. He explored his wing. It was luxurious. Glass desk, Egyptian cotton sheets, a minibar stocked with things he couldn't pronounce, but it didn't feel like his. Not a single trace of warmth. No family photos. No books. Just cold, expensive silence. He sat on the edge of the bed and checked his phone. No signal. Of course. At dinner, she was already seated when he arrived. The dining room stretched like a ballroom. The table was long enough to fit a royal family, yet only 2 seats were filled, hers and his. "You're punctual," she said, not looking up. "You're watching," he replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. She sipped her wine. "How's the room?" "Nice," he said. "Looks like a magazine I can't afford." She smiled faintly. "Good. You should enjoy the illusion. Reality is rarely as generous." Noah didn't know what to say. He watched as she cut her steak, precise, methodical, almost surgical. "You used to be a surgeon," he blurted. She paused mid-cut. Her eyes slowly rose to meet his. "Rule number 3, she whispered. "No questions about my past." He froze. "Sorry." They ate in silence after that. That night, he couldn't sleep. He paced the hallway, staring at the east wing from across the railing. The gold-doored room stared back at him like a secret begging to be violated. He didn't go near it. Not yet. But he noticed something. One of the hallway paintings, a portrait of Charlotte in her 30s, had been slashed. Clean through the face. Not by accident. Who had done that? And more importantly, why hadn't she removed it? At around 2:15 a.m., Noah heard something. Music. Faint. Fragile. Like a lullaby hummed by someone half remembering how to feel. He followed the sound. Down the hallway. Past the grand staircase. To a door slightly ajar. He peeked inside. A grand piano sat in the center of a dimly lit room. Charlotte sat at it, back turned, hands trembling over the keys. She wasn't playing, just pressing her fingers against them. Gently, like they were old memories she wasn't ready to remember. A half-full wine glass sat nearby. A music sheet torn in half lay on the floor. And then, she wept. Not the loud kind, not the dramatic kind. Just soft, steady tears. Like rain dripping off the edge of a roof long after the storm had passed. Noah stepped back, quietly. He didn't want her to know he saw, but something shifted in him. For the first time, he realized. This woman, with all her rules and her wealth and her cold, sharp stare, was drowning in something deeper than loneliness. Maybe guilt, maybe grief, maybe something worse. He returned to his room, head spinning. Who was she? Why did she marry him? And what the hell was behind that locked gold door? He stared at the ceiling until dawn, the contract still lying folded on his nightstand. It was only day 1. And already, the mansion felt less like a home, and more like a riddle made of marble and silence. By morning, the silence in the mansion had changed. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was aware. Noah Carter stepped out of his guest suite and felt it immediately. The weight in the air. Like the house itself had woken up and was watching him. He made his way to the hallway again, where that forbidden door loomed like a sealed grave, gold-plated, untouched, humming with memory. The same door Charlotte told him never to open. Rule number 1. But rules meant very little when you didn't understand why they existed. He approached it slowly. His hand hovered over the antique brass handle. It was colder than it should have been. He twisted, locked. He tried again, harder, still locked. Then he noticed something odd. A faint scratch on the wood below the handle. Not just a scuff. Claw marks. 3 of them. Deep. Old. Ragged. He took a step back. What the hell had tried to open this before? Curiosity became itch. He searched the east wing during the day while Charlotte was asleep, or pretending to be. Most rooms were empty or covered in white sheets, but one door opened into an attic stairwell, dust thick as secrets, air dry like forgotten pages. He climbed. The attic was vast, full of old trunks and furniture that once meant something. He opened one box, then another. Inside the third, he found a stack of photographs, yellowed with time, curled at the edges, smelling faintly of lavender and decay. There she was, Charlotte, young, radiant, magnetic, holding a child, a little boy with big brown eyes, both smiling like they believed in forever. Noah flipped through the rest. There were dozens. Then, suddenly, gaps. Photos had been ripped out, torn clean from the album. Entire chapters. Missing. The next photo he found was different. Charlotte, mid-30s. Same eyes, colder now. Next to her stood a man. Tall, well-dressed, holding a glass of scotch and looking just off camera, like he couldn't bear to meet the lens. Noah turned it over. G. Harrington, summer '99. The back had a smudge, like someone had tried to erase the name. He pocketed it without thinking. Downstairs, the maid caught him on his way back. Tall, quiet woman, maybe in her 50s. Tired eyes and hands that had scrubbed too much grief from too many surfaces. "You shouldn't be in the East Wing," she said gently. "I was just looking for answers." He didn't speak. She looked him dead in the eye. "She's kind to you now, but don't wake the ghost, Mr. Carter." "What ghost?" The maid looked toward the ceiling, where the attic lay quiet. "The one that still sleeps behind the gold door." And then she walked away. Noah stood in the hallway, the photo burning in his pocket. That night, Charlotte was waiting at dinner again. Same dress, different necklace. Wine already poured. She looked at him with a softness that almost seemed maternal, if it weren't so calculated. "You slept late today," she said. "Didn't sleep much last night," Noah replied. She sipped her drink. "Something on your mind?" "The rules," he said slowly. "They're unusual." "Life is unusual," she countered. He stared at her. She looked so normal, so fragile, so human, but something inside him was shifting. "Your husband?" he asked, almost casually. "What about him?" She didn't blink. "Did he die in this house?" Silence. For a moment, all he could hear was the ticking of the grandfather clock behind her. Then she set down her glass. "You've broken rule number 3, Noah." He tried to explain, tried to make it seem innocent, but she just stood and walked toward the window. "I was married once," she said softly, "to a man who made a lot of promises. We built this house together, but not all foundations hold." Noah didn't move. "He vanished," she continued, 20 years ago. Just disappeared. No note, no goodbye. One day he was here, the next gone. He swallowed. "And no one found him?" She turned her head slightly. "They searched, they accused, they whispered, but no one ever found a body." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "People still ask, did I kill him?" Noah's throat closed. She looked at him then, eyes sharp as razors, glimmering with something between amusement and warning. "What do you think, Noah?" He wanted to say no. He wanted to be kind, to show trust, but he couldn't speak. She smiled. "Good. Then we understand each other." She left him at the table, alone with the wine, the silence, and a growing terror that he'd been invited here not to be her husband, but to be something else entirely. That night, he stood once more in front of the gold door. This time, he pressed his ear to it. Nothing. No sound. No breath. No echo. But it wasn't empty. He felt it. The heaviness. The warning. The promise. And just as he was about to walk away, he noticed it. A light flicked on from underneath the door. For less than a second. Then darkness again. He didn't sleep that night, and he didn't try to. Because the questions were no longer just haunting him. They were following him. By the third morning, the mansion felt smaller, not physically. It still stretched with silent rooms and endless halls. But emotionally, the walls felt closer, the air thinner, the shadows longer. Noah Carter stood in the guest bathroom, staring at his reflection like it might answer him. His face looked different, not older, not tired, just less his. He hadn't left the estate in 72 hours. No phone service, no internet, no voice from the outside world except the maid, who now only nodded when she passed him. And Charlotte, always Charlotte, watching him like a chessboard she had memorized. Breakfast was silent, lunch was skipped, and by dinner, the storm finally broke. He entered the dining room to find the lights dimmed and the table empty. Charlotte wasn't at her usual place. Instead, the butler approached and handed him a folded card. "She's asked you to meet her in the music room," he said. "She's not well today." The music room was dark. Only a floor lamp burned near the piano. Charlotte sat beside it, wrapped in a blanket. No makeup, no jewelry. Just a face stripped of all its armor. She looked small, human. Her voice was softer than usual. "Sit down, Noah." He did. Not because he wanted to, but because some part of him needed to. She didn't look at him. "Do you know what they don't tell you about dying?" she asked. Noah hesitated. "That it doesn't feel real until it's too late?" She smiled. "No. That it doesn't feel like dying. It feels like leaking. Like someone poked a hole in you and each day more light slips out." He said nothing. She finally turned her head and he saw it, the slight tremor in her hands, the faint yellow beneath her eyes, the weight behind her smile. "Liver cancer," she said, like she was reporting the weather. "It's been eating me slowly for 2 years. I stopped the treatments last month." He blinked. "You what?" "They weren't working. Just buying time. And I don't need time. I need peace." There it was, the confession, not about murder, not about the gold door, but about her end. "I have no heirs," she said. "No children, no family. The Harrington name will die with me." She looked away again. "That's why I brought you here. Not just for the money or the contract. I needed someone to see me before I vanish." Noah's heart twisted. Because suddenly this wasn't about suspicion or ghosts or locked doors. It was about grief. A grief too big for a woman like her to carry alone. "Why me?" he asked. She chuckled, tired. "Because you look like you had nothing left to lose. And sometimes, the best mirrors are the ones that are cracked." He sat with that for a moment. Flashback. A memory bubbled up without warning. Noah, 10 years old, standing in the doorway of a one-bedroom apartment, watching his father walk out with a duffel bag. No goodbye, no fight, just absence. His mother collapsed a week later. Not physically, emotionally. She never recovered. Not really. She used to say it when she thought he couldn't hear. "Men don't leave, baby. They disappear." And he had spent every year since trying not to disappear. He looked at Charlotte, this fragile, dying woman who'd once towered over boardrooms and black tie galas, now shaking beneath a blanket in a haunted mansion, and he couldn't tell anymore. Was she manipulating him, Or was she just trying to find a witness to her story before it ended? "What happens after 7 days?" he asked quietly. She closed her eyes. "Either you understand me by then, or you walk away with a check and no questions." "And if I don't understand you?" She opened her eyes. "Then maybe I chose the wrong mirror." He left her there that night. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't press. Just walked back to his suite, mind spinning. But he didn't sleep. He lay awake, watching the ceiling, his chest heavy with emotions he couldn't name. Sympathy, fear, confusion, maybe even protectiveness. The woman terrified him, but she was also beginning to matter. At 3:12 a.m., he got up, walked to the hallway, stood in front of the gold door again, still locked, still silent. But somehow, that door wasn't the real mystery anymore. The real mystery was her. By day 4, Noah Carter began to understand something terrifying. Charlotte Harrington wasn't dying alone. She was orchestrating her own ending, piece by piece, step by step. And he was becoming part of the script. The morning passed in silence. Noah walked the grounds, trying to think, trying to feel something other than the eerie calm inside the estate. The garden was perfectly maintained, too perfect. No weeds, no insects, no soul. Even the birds didn't sing. He sat by the koi pond and watched the fish move like secrets beneath the surface. Smooth, silent, untouchable. When he returned to the mansion, the butler met him at the entrance. "There's a visitor," the man said without expression. "Who?" Noah asked. The butler didn't answer. He just turned and led him to the lounge. Inside sat a man in a charcoal suit, silver tie, and shoes that didn't belong on soil. He stood when Noah entered, offering a dry handshake. "Mr. Carter, I'm Leonard Voss, estate lawyer to the Harrington family." Noah tensed. He glanced around. "Where's Charlotte?" "She's asked that I speak with you privately first," the lawyer said. "We'll be brief." He opened a leather folder and pulled out a thin set of papers. "You are currently listed as Charlotte Harrington's legal spouse and primary beneficiary, as per the amended will filed last month." Noah blinked. "I thought this was temporary." Voss smiled politely. "So did I." He turned a page. "The will is binding, but conditional. You will inherit the full estate, including financial assets, properties, and holdings, estimated currently at $582 million, if, and only if, you fulfill the 7-day marital period. And if I leave before that?" The lawyer closed the folder. "Everything reverts to charity foundations." "And if she dies before then?" Voss tilted his head. "The contract becomes void. No payout, no inheritance." It hit him like a gust of cold wind. He wasn't just married. He was tethered to a countdown. Every second mattered. Every rule, every breath she took. She was dying. And if she died too soon, everything vanished. And suddenly, the mansion didn't feel haunted by the past. It felt haunted by possibility. That evening, Noah walked into the drawing room and stopped cold. Charlotte stood by the fireplace, letters burning in her hands. One by one, she fed the flames, pale envelopes, sealed in wax, curling into ash as they disappeared. He watched her silently, unsure if she even noticed him. But she did. Without turning, she said, "He used to write me every Sunday. Even after he left, I kept them all, until now." Noah stepped closer. "Who?" She dropped another letter in. The flame snapped. "My husband. You said he vanished." "He did." She turned to him then, eyes soft but unreadable. "He thought I wouldn't find out. But I did. That's why he never came back." The room chilled. Noah's pulse skipped. "What did you find out?" She didn't answer, just stared into the fire, watching the last envelope blacken and curl into smoke. People lie, Noah, even to those they claim to love, especially to them. Did you? He stopped himself, but the air finished the question. Did you kill him? Her lips twitched just a little. If I had, she said. Don't you think someone would have found him by now? He didn't sleep. Again. His mind raced, not just with fear, but something more dangerous, curiosity. She wasn't giving him facts. She was giving him clues, hints, as if she wanted him to piece it together, but only on her terms. He stared at the ceiling until 2:43 a.m. Then he got up, walked past the grand staircase, and stood once more in front of the gold door, still locked. But this time there was a sound inside, a creak, like a chair moving, or someone standing. He pressed his ear to it. Silence. Then 3 knocks. Slow, soft, from the inside. He stumbled back, heart pounding, turned, left the hallway, and didn't return until the sun had burned the shadows away. The next morning, the butler handed him a new envelope. Inside it was a note, handwritten, slanted script. You only have 3 days left. Don't waste them trying to uncover the past. Noah folded the letter slowly, then stared at the gold door again from across the railing. 3 days. 3 rules. 3 knocks. And one question that wouldn't leave him alone. Was he going to inherit her fortune, or join her husband behind that door? By day 5, Noah stopped wondering if the mansion had secrets. He started wondering if he had been one all along. Charlotte hadn't left her room that morning. The maid said she was resting, but her tone suggested something deeper, something like waiting for something or someone to finally crack. Noah wandered the halls with a feeling in his chest he couldn't name. It wasn't fear anymore. It was a pull, a whisper behind the walls, a heartbeat under the floorboards, the attic. He hadn't returned since the photo albums, but something about that morning, the chill in the air, the emptiness of the east wing, drew him back up the stairs. The dust had thickened, or maybe his nerves had. He searched through trunks, boxes, and cracked drawers. Most held antiques, old receipts, yellowing letters in French or German. But then he found it. An old camcorder. Sony. Late 90s. Heavy, still intact. Covered in a velvet wrap. Inside, a tape already loaded. He pressed play. The screen flickered. Static. Then movement. The video was raw, handheld, slightly tilted. Charlotte, much younger, late 40s maybe, hair-pinned, face stern. She stood in the kitchen. Across from her was a man, mid-50s, sharp jaw, expensive watch, furious eyes. "You think you can hide this?" he shouted. "I already did," she said, cool as glass. The camera shook. Whoever held it was breathing heavily. The man grabbed her wrist. She didn't flinch. "I gave you everything. You gave me lies, and a child afraid of your shadow." Noah froze. A child? The tape cut sharply, then static again. Then the man stumbled, blood on his forehead. Charlotte stood nearby, eyes wide, no weapon in sight. "Don't do this," she whispered. "You did this to yourself." Then a loud crash. The camera jolted. Something, or someone, fell. Then, black screen. End of tape. Noah rewound it twice, played it again, and again. He needed to believe it was fake, that it had been staged. But it wasn't. He could feel it in his bones. This wasn't performance. It was confession. He carried the camcorder down the stairs with trembling hands. The house creaked as he moved, like it knew what he'd found. Charlotte was in the music room again. She sat on the floor this time, legs tucked beneath her, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold in what was left of her life. The fire burned low beside her. No music, no wine, just her and silence. He placed the camcorder gently on the floor near her. She looked at it, then at him. "I was wondering when you'd find that," she whispered. "Was it real?" he asked. "What did you see?" He didn't answer. She looked away. "I didn't kill him, Noah." A pause. "But I didn't stop him either." The room didn't move. The fire didn't crackle. Only her voice, soft, unraveling, filled the space. "He hit me once, then again, and then he stopped hiding it. Said I was weak, that no one would believe me. So I waited for him to fall. And when he did, I didn't catch him." A tear slid down her cheek. "And I didn't lie to the police. I just didn't remember. Trauma makes holes of the mind." "The child," Noah said hoarsely. "Was it yours?" She nodded slowly. "Ours, a boy. Sensitive, smart, loved music. He saw it all. Where is he?" Her eyes filled. "Gone, long before his father." Noah didn't speak, because he couldn't. He looked down at his own hands, clenched without realizing, jaw locked, heart pounding. And then something inside him cracked. A memory. His mother, bruised after an argument she never explained. The sound of shattering glass behind a closed bedroom door. His own fists tightening as a child, swearing he'd never be that weak, that small. He saw it now, not just in her story, but in himself. That same hunger, not for justice, but for proof. Proof that he mattered, that he wasn't invisible, that he had power. It was the same fire that burned in Charlotte, and it terrified him. She looked at him then, truly looked, and said softly, "Do you still want the money, Noah?" He didn't answer, because for the first time, he wasn't sure. That night he stood in front of the gold door again. He didn't knock. He didn't listen. He just stared and realized the door didn't hold a ghost. It held a mirror. By the 6th day, the mansion had grown quiet in a different way. Not the stillness of wealth, not the silence of secrets, but the hush that comes when death begins to prepare the room. Charlotte Harrington didn't come to breakfast, or lunch, or dinner. She never left her bed. Noah stood outside her door for almost 10 minutes before he knocked. There was no reply. The maid appeared behind him and simply opened the door without a word. Inside, Charlotte lay against ivory pillows, her skin nearly matching them now. She was smaller, thinner, almost translucent. The grand woman he met 6 days ago, who sipped wine with perfect posture and gave rules like royalty, had disappeared into the linens, but her eyes were still sharp, still watching. "Sit," she rasped. He did. Her nightstand was cluttered now. Pill bottles, half-empty glasses, folded cloths that had seen too much pain. "There's a folder in the drawer," she whispered. "I need you to read it." Noah pulled it out carefully. It was bound in navy leather. Her name embossed in gold, Charlotte Grace Harrington. Inside, her will. His hands trembled as he opened it. She motioned for him to read aloud. So he did. "I, Charlotte Grace Harrington, being of sound mind and with full clarity of judgment, do hereby bequeath my entire estate, including but not limited to real property, financial accounts, art holdings, trust funds, and liquid capital, to my legal spouse, Mr. Noah James Carter." His voice cracked at his own name. She watched him with something between pride and pity. He continued, "With the following condition, that he agree to fulfill my final request in life and death." Noah glanced up. She nodded once. "Keep reading." "To the world, I leave behind legacy and scandal in equal measure. Let the records argue over which mattered more. But to you, Noah, I leave the burden of my truth. You must tell them I was a good woman, even if you think I wasn't." He stopped. She turned her head slowly to face the ceiling. "Everyone rewrites themselves before the end," she whispered. "This is my rewrite. You're the only one I trust to speak it." Noah couldn't respond, because something inside him ached. Was she a villain? A victim? Both? He couldn't tell anymore. But as he sat by her side, holding her will, he realized something that broke him more than anything she'd done. She had no one else. No family, no friends, no mourners waiting beyond the gate. Just him, a stranger, a contract, a mirror. That night he didn't try to sleep. He wandered the halls like a ghost. The house was colder, the air heavier. Charlotte hadn't spoken again since he read her will. The maid told him she'd been drifting in and out, asking for music that no one knew how to play. Noah passed the music room, silent, past the dining room, empty, and then he reached the gold door. But this time, it was open, just slightly. A sliver of light peeked through the crack. He stood still for nearly a minute, then stepped forward, slow, careful, and pushed it open. The room was small, not grand, not cursed, not even that unusual, just personal. Walls covered in faded wallpaper, a child's desk in the corner, a cracked photograph on the shelf, a boy playing piano, beaming, and on the far wall, a painting, huge, covered in a white cloth. He pulled the cloth down. It was a portrait. Charlotte, holding a little boy, her son, her real legacy, and written across the bottom in charcoal, "Forgive what I couldn't fix." Noah stepped back, heart pounding. This wasn't a locked room. It was a graveyard of memory, a shrine to someone she could never talk about. Not to the world, not to the media, not even to herself. Her son was gone, and now she was fading too. He walked back to his suite, dragging his fingers across the cold railing of the staircase. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what to do with kindness, because it had been twisted into a shape he couldn't recognize. That night, Charlotte didn't call for anyone. No piano, no letters, no rules, just silence. And Noah, sitting by his window, staring out into the black hills of Los Angeles, wondering what would be left of either of them by morning. Morning came quietly. No birds, no wind, just sunlight crawling across the walls like it too was afraid to disturb the peace. Noah didn't rise right away. He sat on the edge of his bed for a long time, staring at the letter Charlotte had written into her will. "Tell them I was a good woman, even if you think I wasn't." It repeated in his mind like a song he couldn't shake, and he still didn't know the answer. Was she? He made coffee but didn't drink it, paced the hallway but didn't knock on her door. Instead, he returned to the gold room. This time, he didn't hesitate. He entered fully, like it belonged to him now, or like it always had. The room was brighter than he remembered. Maybe the curtains had been drawn. Maybe the air had shifted since last night. It didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt sacred. He studied the photographs on the walls, all of Charlotte at various ages, in various states of joy, pride, distance. But in every photo, the same boy appeared, always the same face, same brown eyes, a quiet kind of light in him until it dimmed near the end. Noah moved to the dresser. On it sat a small jewelry box, unopened. Inside, a man's wedding ring, engraved on the inside with a date. June 9th, 1985, forever, C+M. And beneath the ring, a folded envelope, yellowed slightly edges brittle. It was addressed in ink to Noah Carter. He stared at it, shaking. Because somehow, impossibly, this letter had his name written in a hand that was not Charlotte's. He opened it with trembling fingers. If you're reading this, then she found you. Or you found her. I guess it doesn't matter which. My name was Michael Carter. You know me as the man who left your mother when you were 10. I'm sorry for that. There's a lot I'm sorry for, but none more than walking away from you. Noah froze. The air left his lungs. His eyes scanned the signature again. Michael Carter, his father. Charlotte was my mother, your grandmother. I never told her about you, never told anyone. I ran from everything, from her, from myself, from the kind of man I was becoming. And when I realized what I'd done, it was too late to go back. But if she found you, it means she forgave me, in her way. And if you're reading this, it means she's chosen you to carry whatever legacy she still believed in. Be careful with it. Her love is complicated, but it's real. Don't disappear like I did. Dad. Noah sat on the floor of the gold room for a long time. He didn't cry. He didn't move, just held the letter and let everything realign in his head. Charlotte was his grandmother. Michael, the father he hated, resented, mourned, was her son. The marriage, the contract, the money, it was all a lie. No, not a lie. A test, a riddle only blood could answer. She hadn't married him. She had chosen him, not to be her husband, but to be her heir, her blood, her second chance. He stood and looked around the room again with new eyes. The child's desk, his father's, the cracked photo, Charlotte holding him as a baby, the piano, the one she sat beside each night, weeping not for a lover, but for a son. He walked to her bedroom without knocking. The maid was there, sitting quietly beside her bed. Charlotte was still, so still, no breath, no movement, no tension, just peace, like a woman who had finally finished the longest chapter of her life. Noah approached slowly. The maid stood and placed a small white envelope in his hand. She wrote this before she slipped into sleep last night, she whispered. Inside was a single card. On it, one sentence. You reminded me that some things are still worth saving. Noah sat with her for hours, didn't say anything, didn't move, just stayed, because somehow, even in death, she wasn't gone yet. Not from him, not from the house, not from the story. The next morning, the lawyer returned. Papers were signed, assets transferred. The estate was his. But he didn't ask about the money, or the titles, or the bank accounts. He just asked one question. Why me? Leonard Voss looked him in the eye and said simply, because you're the only piece she had left that hadn't already been lost. Charlotte Grace Harrington died on the 7th night, not in drama, not in chaos, but in stillness. Like the mansion had been holding its breath all along, just waiting for the final exhale. Noah Carter sat with her until dawn. He didn't call anyone. He didn't speak. He just watched the morning light slip across her pillow like a soft goodbye. The room smelled like lavender and dust. Her hand, when he touched it, was cool, but not cold. The maid came quietly. The butler stood at the doorway with red eyes and tight lips. The staff, who had once spoken only in nods, now moved with reverence, as if they too knew something had shifted. A chapter had closed, and the mansion had finally stopped watching. Then came the headlines. Broke janitor marries 71-year-old billionaire, inherits fortune. Boy toy or long-lost heir? America's wealthiest widow sparks mystery. Harrington's final scandal. Was it marriage or madness? They ran with it. twisted it, spun it into something grotesque and clickable. No one cared about truth, only spectacle. And Noah, he couldn't stop it. Reporters camped outside the gates. Paparazzi followed him into parking lots. Talk shows debated whether he was a genius or a gigolo. Some even dug up Charlotte's past, the missing husband, the rumors, the will, and then they found the name. Carter. His. And everything collapsed in on itself. Poor boy marries billionaire grandma? That was the headline that broke him. It went viral in 37 countries. A meme, a punchline. His face, tired, stunned, human, plastered beside Charlotte's proud, elegant portrait. And beneath it, 1,000 strangers mocking what they'd never understand. He nearly gave it all away, called the lawyer, told him to transfer the estate to a foundation, pack it all up, burn it if needed. "I don't want it," he whispered, "not like this." But the lawyer didn't act. He waited, because he knew. Grief doesn't speak clearly, and identity doesn't settle in the noise. A week later, Noah visited her grave. No cameras, no reporters, just gray sky and soft wind. She was buried in the private garden behind the house, under a weeping willow tree, next to no one. Just her, alone, as she had been for too long. He stood in silence, no speech, no flowers, but the grave had something waiting. A small metal box embedded in the earth. The groundskeeper said she'd left instructions for it to be placed there, not for public viewing, for him, only him. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a folded letter, brittle at the edges, written in her hand. The money sat in his accounts like lead, heavy, cold, unmovable. Reporters still chased him. The tabloids still guessed. Conspiracies still crawled across YouTube. But none of that mattered anymore. Because Noah Carter knew what Charlotte had really left him. Not a fortune, not fame, but a mirror. And now, it was his turn to reflect something different. He started quietly. No interviews, no public statements, no victory lap. He walked into a battered nonprofit office downtown. No security, no suit, and slid a folder across the table. Inside, a check with more zeros than the director had ever seen. "For shelters," he said, "for women, for the ones no one believes." He left before she could thank him. A week later, he did it again. Different city, different state. Anonymous donations started pouring into trauma centers, safe houses, crisis lines. He never attached a name, never asked for credit, because he wasn't giving away her money. He was redistributing her silence. Every dollar was a scream she'd never been allowed to voice. Now others could. The mansion didn't stay a mansion. Within 3 months, the furniture was gone, the art removed, the wine cellar emptied. Construction began. The grand dining hall became a library. The ballroom, a lecture theater. The music room stayed exactly the same. When it was done, the plaque at the front read, "The Harrington School for Restoration and Arts," in honor of those who outlived the pain and chose to turn it into purpose. On opening day, he didn't attend the ribbon cutting. He sat in the back. Anonymous. Watching the children, mostly girls, mostly quiet, walk through the halls of a house that once swallowed secrets, now echoing with laughter. That night, when everyone had gone, he stayed behind, alone, in the music room. The grand piano still stood under the warm light, unmoved, untouched. He sat before it, placed his fingers on the same keys Charlotte once had, pressed down. A soft chord filled the air, then another, then the same trembling, broken melody she used to play, the one he never quite recognized. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. He closed his eyes, letting the notes drift. Not for her, not even for himself, but for the boy he used to be, the one who thought survival was the goal, and never imagined he could become something bigger. Did he lose it all? No. He lost what was never his to carry, and in its place, he built something no inheritance could offer. Meaning. Outside, the wind rustled the willow tree. The house was no longer a tomb. It was a beginning, and somewhere, in memory, in music, in story, Charlotte Harrington was finally heard.